now it's dropped. Right folks, so welcome back to another video. We're doing the first mods on the E60 M5 today. I'm glad a bunch of you folks did enjoy the first drive video. It's quite fun taking out this V10 on some back roads. But yeah, without further ado, let's make a start and I'll show you what I got. So we're going to begin with some interior modifications first. I'll get to all of that in a second, but first a quick recap on the car itself. As I've shown previously, good example, 70,000 miles, Interlagos blue paintwork, along with the contrast Silverstone leather interior. It isn't like a crazy spec or anything, it was mainly the combination that I wanted and a car that hasn't been abused. Now for the most part, you don't really need to change much on an E60 M5. In my opinion, I think they look pretty perfect out of the box, so yeah, there's no point adding silly bits on there. And basically, you know what people do with a lot of modern M cars, it does really apply to these things. But I thought because we're doing a series, it'd be good to just personalize a few things. So what we've got here is a genuine E60 M5 steering wheel that's sent off to get retrimmed in Alcantara. Now you may notice it still has the M striping if the lighting actually allows us to see it. So yeah, that's all OEM style. But in the middle here, I thought I'd go for a Silverstone center stripe, so the match is pretty good. I know M5s are more of a luxury car and maybe something like this is probably not suited to it. But I am taking inspiration from like later CS models and CSLs and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the ultimate goal with this thing, to create like an OEM plus CS vibed S85 V10 thing, but you get my drift anyway. And next over here, this is more of a kind of usability thing. So what this is a Android CarPlay unit. Pretty self-explanatory. Need this to actually use the car in today's day and age. But moving over to here, we have quite a rare piece of kit. So what this is an OEM E60 M5 Alcantara headliner. Pretty expensive option from new. And I've got the entire kit here. Now I'll be honest, again, I wasn't really fussed because they already come with a black headliner, and it's usually an issue when they're beige and all of that because it just looks horrible. But in the case of this, I actually got quite lucky. So a friend of mine, Akil, he basically found out I was getting one of these. He said to me, I've actually got a full Alcantara headliner for an E60 M5 just sitting around doing nothing. So he basically said I could have it, so I'm not have to pay anything for all of this, and normally they're very expensive to find. And you can see now why I went for an Alcantara retrim. This was done by Royal Steering Wheels. Okay, so I've got the camera on a tripod. I'm armed with some trim removal tools because that's pretty much what you need for majority of this job. For these, you basically get a pick tool that will unveil a T15. So I'm going to use a screwdriver rather than some crazy impact gun like I do at times. Next, we need to get this airbag tag off. Nothing's broken, it's just clips that are on pretty tight. They've probably not been off since 2008. Yep. A lot more cooperative on this side. Also got to remove these lights. Try this out as well. Ow, this already looks loose for some reason. Next, we need to move on to these B pillars. Now, because these have the seat belt threaded through them, I'm going to have to undo it at one end, and that's basically attached to the seat through there. And we also need to remove these window seals as well, which I believe, or door seals rather, they just come off like that. You want to pull this lower clip off as well, so you get a bit more play. Nearly broke my wrist then. Wasn't that tight, but now we can take the B pillar trim off. Now before I put these in, I've noticed these pillar trims have got quite a bit of dirt on there. You can see it's gone a bit green. And to clean like steering wheels and any Alcantara, I always use this, which is Sonax, whatever it is, Alcantara cleaner. This was actually very clean, well, brand new in fact, and it's already taken off that much dirt. Now the next thing we need to do is deal with this sunroof and all the screws around it, because the headliner is attached to that. And then of course we also have a replacement lid, which is going to be in Alcantara, so the original one's in the same kind of vibe. But from what I've read after digging around, I'm going to have to remove the glass on the sunroof. All right, so this pulls off pretty easily, to be fair. I mean, in there you can see 1, 2, 3, so T20s. And then you want to do the same on the other side. So this is the odd part. Yeah, I've never done this before. Sunroof delete, quite literally. We are going to be careful. So there's 4 Torx screws holding this in. Yeah, of course it's a T20. And there we are. Glass on the cover is out, but now we've got practically about 20 of these tiny little Torx screws to take out. There you can see that's where the headliner is attaching onto it. I think I'll skip this part because it's probably a bit boring. Now next we need to deal with this, which I seem to be dealing as I'm talking about it, but it's basically the brake light cover. And the remaining ones are like rivets, so you got those there. I think there's another one there as well. And there we have it. Trim piece out. Bit of a nightmare that. Right, looks like we got one Phillips screw left in. Now it's dropped. From the guides I've watched, they've pretty much just left the seats in and just slid it out through this particular door. I'm not sure if that matters, but we're going to attempt that now. Quick little top tip if you are struggling, because I was for the last 5 minutes. Make sure that seat's all the way back in terms of its backrest and is all the way back as well. Otherwise you won't be able to get it past the side bolster. I'm just glad nothing broke. All the clips are intact. Nothing's been damaged. So yeah, it all should go back on, in theory, as it came off. Okay. Now I bet you can tell the difference from this angle already. I've got it in and I've basically just put in this Phillips screw, so it's kind of just hanging in mid-air just based on that. The best way I can describe the feeling in here, it's like a cinema kind of vibe. It's just so much more, yeah, it just feels a lot plusher in the cabin, and I love the contrast with the Silverstone. Reinstallation is pretty much the reverse of what we've already done so far. I'm going to begin with the back because that's where we ended last time. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to get all the other trim pieces back together. There's only about an hour and a half left of daylight, and that cloud doesn't look very promising, especially when you've got this massive hole in the roof, which doesn't agree very well with rain. And just like that, it's the next day, also nice and sunny. Alcantara headliners all in, might as well jump in the car. Yeah, I mean, just check this out, folks. Genuinely surprised with how well this has turned out. Everything is in as it should be, all works. Now, unfortunately, there's two things I haven't been able to change with the kit that I've got. This part here, which controls like the sunroof and has like the SOS button and whatnot, is in the original black. I mean, luckily it's not a contrast, but it isn't in Alcantara, so I'm gonna have to source that. And some of you more clued up E60 folk might have noticed I didn't change this out, which is like a parcel shelf. Now I do actually have that. I'll show you it now. So here it is. The reason why I didn't show it earlier is because I had no intentions of fitting it, mainly because it looks like it's been sun damaged in the past. Don't know what I could do with this. I don't want to fit it in the car because it is going to bother me. Either I got to source another one, which may be a bit tricky to do, or I get this kind of re-dyed, but I don't know what the original shade of the OEM Alcantara is. Now next on the list of modifications is to change out the steering wheel with that Alcantara one over there. So yeah, let's make a start. Now to remove a steering wheel on an E60, there's actually one hole here to prop out the airbag. On an E90, there's one on either side, and I personally find that a bit easier. The instructions on IST actually say to use a T25 screwdriver officially, so we'll give that a go. Okay, so this is pretty ironic. I turned the camera off for about 10 seconds whilst I got some other tools because couldn't quite get the grip on the sort of spring that releases this. And lo and behold, I put a T15 in there, it all just pops off anyway, so yeah, it's free now. See, if you put it in and you just sort of moving it around, you can easily not do anything. Like the springs are actually those two lines there, and there's one on either side, so there's 4 in total. Okay, there you go. So it's angled a bit back, so it's like facing towards me. You can see there it's moving. Bit of force into this. Out. But yeah, that's one freed M5 steering wheel. We'll head over to the table now and swap over all these other bits. All right, so from what I can see, we've got a few different torque screws here and another 2 there for the buttons. Nothing seems to be on the back. All right, so this bracket with its harness is going to get swapped over. Seeing as this parcel shelf isn't going to be used for anything, might as well turn it into a makeshift table on top of a chair. Oh, this is looking so much nicer now. And there we have it. That's all been built up now. We can get it back in the car. Looks lovely along with the roof lining now. It's all coming together. Let's get the battery connected and turn this thing around. All right, move it back first. Fancy electrical adjustment. I've never had that on a car before. Bracing myself in case the airbag explodes. Hopefully it doesn't. Oh, that looks so good. Oh mate, that Silverstone stripe. I was a bit unsure at the start. Oh, and I love these as well. Look how it's all just Alcantara. Let's make sure all these buttons work as well. So yep, that works. Won't get copyrighted. M button. Yep, you can see the head-up display coming on. Put it into D. Now, in theory, if I press this, it should go into the manual setting. Yep, that's working. 2. Okay, we're all set. Now at this point I was going to move on to our final interior modification, which was fitting the Android CarPlay unit that I showed at the start of the video. I've fitted a similar system to my E92, so I'm quite familiar with the process. You remove the trims, you take out the old screen, and you basically add in the new quad lock connector and whatnot. Unfortunately it didn't all go to plan, because once I got everything back together and booted it up, this is what I was presented with. What you may notice is it's flickering quite bad. As with any of these Android systems, you long press on the menu button and it'll go to the original system. Look at the state of that. It's slowly fading away. Just watch that for a second. I have no idea what's going on there. Hopefully it hasn't ruined the original iDrive, because I'm going to have to put the original screen back in. So yeah, a bit of a letdown. I was quite looking forward to getting my phone connected up to this thing, but I guess who needs music when you got a V10? What we'll do now, we'll move on to the next modification, which will actually help amplify that. So yes, of course, we are installing an Eventuri intake, so big shout out to the guys at Eventuri, as always, for supporting the various builds on the channel. This is one of the earlier intakes they made. It was actually on Imran's own car that they developed this system on. And ironically, it was an Interlagos blue as well. So I'll give you a quick run through. So obviously we've got the patented Venturi housing. So we're going to be replacing the stock airboxes. I'll figure out which one's which in a second. As to be expected with an Eventuri product, everything's very high quality. So these are the MAF housings. There's of course 2 of them. We also have these heat shields for either side. I mean, even the lining on it's in this soft felt. Now we also have these scoops which are in red. From what I've seen, they go in the grille and they sort of direct air. But I'll be honest, on a blue car, I'm not too sure they're going to work. So this is probably something I am going to leave off for now. It might affect the performance potentially, but I want to get them maybe sprayed black. Now from the videos I've seen online, these intakes have been shown to net you around 10 to 15 horsepower, which is pretty good for a naturally aspirated engine. I haven't had this thing dynoed yet, so I can't give you any before data for now. But hopefully throughout this series, I'll get it chucked on a dyno and we'll see what's what. Now next what we need to do is install these heat shields. For what I can see, there's a bung covering this bit of thread here on the chassis. Now that is basically the air feed coming directly from the grille, so that's going to remain, but we're going to sort of behind it essentially, like so. Also need to transfer the MAF over. I have put a bit of silicone spray on this O-ring here because it looked kind of dry. Now you're probably wondering what's going to happen with the washer bottle feed, because it normally attaches on or slides onto the stock airbox. Well, Eventuri supply a bracket, slide it upwards as you would normally. And there's actually a little square cut out there on the frame, 8mm nut there. And there, solid. You can actually move on to putting on the intake itself. You want to install this little bung here, which is going to sit on top of this. I'm assuming that's going to allow you to just space the intake upwards slightly. Lovely stuff. Okay, so it sort of angles downwards. I've just done some final checks, tightened up a few of these clamps and moved these over because they were a bit loose. Now it's pretty solid. That's in, that's in, this is tight. And yeah, all we got to do now is plug this in. Now the difference on this side, you've got this pipe, which I believe is for the secondary air pump feed. You get a supplied breather, so all you got to do is just clip it into place. Undo this 8mm, this supplied kind of like U-clamp. She go like that. She goes on the same way. Tight fit. The final original 10mm bolt. And then lastly, the MAF connector. Right, so that's another modification ticked off the list. Eventuri intake. Definitely like the added bit of carbon fiber in the engine bay, and the way it angles downwards, it just gives you a lot more breathing room essentially for all these lines and whatnot. We're going to turn the car on now, let it idle for a bit, then we'll get some revs in. Sounds like it's got a carbon airbox on it. I'll give it a couple more revs before I get kicked out of my local area. Around 3,000 it totally changes. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's safe to say if you've got a V10 M5 or M6, you need this intake. Sounds insane. Can't imagine what it'd be like when you're actually driving as well. This is all with the standard exhaust, so we're just amplifying more of the engine sound. Quite like this theme, and there's actually still more that can be done, which I'll reveal in the coming weeks. Here's actually a final mod that I want to do before we end today's video. It's quite a simple one. but it's related to the stance of the car. Now if you look here on the standard setup, the wheels are quite recessed back, so all we're going to do is install a set of spacers all around. I've gone for 12mm, the BMW brand. We'll see what they're like. That seems to be the go-to on the M5 forums. Got new bolts as well, which I extended to account for the spacer. Right, so we're ready to jack up the car. Just had one little issue. As you can see, there's one bolt missing on each wheel. Don't worry, it wasn't like that. Those were locking bolts, aftermarket ones, and yeah, the locking nut was not in the boot or anywhere in the car, so I had to do a little bodge to get them off. I have also noticed another thing with this car. Those brake discs are on the wrong side. Looks like in the next video I'm gonna have to do that, change them around. Also need to change the brake fluid and various other service parts, so could be a nice maintenance video. Let's see how stuck that is. Not too bad. Still a fair bit of tread, but they are 2016 dated. Alright, these do look a bit crusty, so give it a good scrub. Let's put a bit of this around the edges, just so it doesn't seize when I take the wheel off the next time. Alright, that's pretty clean. Okay, so I'll put some on this edge as well. It's going to clean off the excess now. Used to changing wheels on a Golf, so this thing is just massive in comparison. Now I would have used a quick jack for this job, but it actually doesn't fit underneath an E60 M5 unless you get the extended frames, which I don't have. So it's a trusty floor jack for now. Right. Oh, that is very heavy. Right, and there we have it. Space is complete on both sides. I'm still kind of unsure on the way the front looks. Obviously it's 12mm all round, but in typical BMW fashion they do sit quite high at the front. The back is pretty much perfect. I'm not usually one for running spacers on cars anyway. I prefer to get the wheel in a correct offset, but with that you're gonna have to go aftermarket, and I quite like the OEM wheel on an E60 M5 along with the M6 wheels, which I believe are the style 167s. But yeah, that pretty much concludes all the mods for today's video. I think that makes 4 of them. We got the Alcantara headliner, the steering wheel, the CarPlay unit flop, so we can't include that, the Eventuri intake, and finally the spacers. I'll insert a little montage now to recap everything, and we'll finish the video off after that. As ever, if you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you drop a like on it. Also subscribe to the channel if you are new, and make sure to follow my Instagram for more behind the scenes stuff. I'll see you in a few days time with another video. Don't know what it's going to be yet. I'm sure it'll be something related to this V10.